Welcome to Creating Great Academic Posters. My name is Anita, and I'm a Writing Reading Speech Assistance Coach in the Learning Commons at the College of DuPage. Before we get started, I'd like you to imagine that you're going on a date. Really important date. In fact, let's make the stakes pretty high. Imagine that this date has to be perfect because you are going to propose to the love of your life. This is going to be an evening that changes the rest of your life, so you need expert advice. Everyone you know is going to hear about how wonderfully or terribly it goes. Now, imagine that you can ask whoever is on this screen to help make this the perfect night. Do you ask this person or do you ask this person? Regardless of who you choose, you made your choice with your audience in mind. For this exercise, your date is your audience. If you wanted a casual evening, then the guy in blue is your expert. If you want champagne and caviar, then the gentleman in the tuxedo will likely have some excellent recommendations. But would you be surprised to hear that these two guys are actually the same person? Keep this in mind as we start talking about posters. One of the most important elements of research in any field is communicating findings. This is often done through papers or lectures, and it also happens through posters. Poster sessions frequently happen at professional conferences so that large numbers of researchers have an opportunity to communicate their work with others. They are an important opportunity for everyone to learn about the work of peers, meet colleagues with similar interests, and forge new collaborations. Posters originally started in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but their popularity has grown to include the humanities and most other disciplines. Although you might think of it as superficial, the graphic design and physical appearance of a poster can determine its success in promoting knowledge transfer. You could have the most fascinating, world-changing study, but if you can't attract others to stop long enough to read your poster, no one will ever know. So recalling the gentleman from our earlier exercise, let's look at two posters to see how formatting can impact communication. What are your first impressions of this poster? You might think it's difficult to follow and there are no clear headers. While they may be an attempt to help guide the reader, I feel the yellow numbers look unprofessional and distracting. It looks like the poster was made that morning, and that makes me wonder how credible the author is or the authors are. As a general audience member or reader, I like that I can read the title from a distance, but I don't understand it, especially with the acronym SIMPAL. And what are your impressions of this poster? For me, this one feels much more professional and credible. The images are clear and labeled with explanations. The color is a nice touch, and there isn't too much of it. However, it seems like a lot of text because there isn't a lot of white space. So using these first impressions, let's get started. When looking at any project, I like to break it into manageable chunks. There are 3 different parts to a poster presentation, and you can remember them by recalling this triangle. The first part is the message, or writing the text. The second is the visual, or creating the poster and how it's formatted. And the final step is the delivery, or the presentation of the poster. A poster presentation needs all 3 elements to be great. We'll start by creating the message. The first step is to gather all of the text that you need. Space on a poster is limited. It's very limited. While keeping your audience in mind, you will need to make decisions about what information, text and images, that you want to include and how to organize this information in each section. This information may come from a paper you've already written, but now you will need to edit it into concise poster language. Don't try to include everything from your paper, and don't just copy and paste paragraphs into the template. That text will need to be strongly edited. Consider including only a thesis statement, topic sentences, and major examples and illustrations. Here's a hint. Even if your content is already written, collect your poster's content in its own Word document to start, rather than trying to write it all in its final destination like a PowerPoint slide. Just like planning our perfect proposal, our choice of content can make or break the way we look. Starting at the top of a great academic poster, we have a title. The title should be no more than 2 lines. Don't use acronyms or abbreviations, especially if your audience won't be made up of experts. Describe your project briefly and concisely by using a short phrase that telegraphs what your research study is about. Keep your audience in mind. For example, most people will not stop to read Fractionis Excelsior Imminent Depletion Post Agralis Planopennis Introduction. However, most people will understand European ash tree populations decline following emerald ash borer infestation. Only high-level experts will be drawn into the title, A Neo-Schenkerian Approach to Structural, Formal, and Prolongational Issues in Aaron Copland's Post-Tonal Juvenalia. Most people, however, will consider stopping for the title, How Tonal is Copland's Music? On the line underneath the title, include the name of each author. Include each author's institutional or organizational affiliation on a line below their names. Here's what these 2 elements would look like on a poster. The poster we are building here is appropriate for science fields. Other fields will have different requirements, and therefore posters for other disciplines may look very different from this one. Regardless, the use of headers is an important organizational feature, so spell them out. For the first section, use the header Introduction to organize your text. You need to include a couple of things here. Establish the context of your research. This means you need to tell the story of your project in an academic way. Start broad and work your way into more specific details. Use citations to show how your research fits into the broader context. End your introduction section with a statement of what your goals or hypotheses were for your research. Consider using a combination of paragraphs and bullet points to make your text visually appealing and easier to read. Your audience will appreciate the white space that bulleted lists create. The methods section should follow the introduction. This section explains what you did to conduct your research and the materials used. Including a picture or pictures of your study location, the species of interest, or other relevant images might work better than text alone, depending on your research. The results section is usually the longest part of a scientific poster. This is where you summarize the major findings of your research project. Include important statistics, but make sure that they are understandable to your average audience. You can see now that science posters follow a rigid format using columns that flow from left to right. In the results section, show your results using visuals, charts, graphs, maps, drawings, photographs, but don't forget the importance of captions for those images. They explain your visuals and tell your readers what information is important in each one. If you use a chart, label what the numbers mean. Ask yourself what you want your audience to take away from your poster. This is the information you should focus on in the conclusion section. State the main findings of your study and the significance of your results. Show how they relate to your initial hypothesis or goals and to the greater research context. Connect your findings to previous literature, and don't forget to include the citations. You might include how you could improve your study in areas for future research. End your story on a positive note, emphasizing the significance of your findings. Include full citation information for all of the sources used in your poster using the citation style preferred in your field. Check with your professor, advisor, or another trusted source to determine the correct style to use. Many research projects receive grant funding and will list organizations that provided funding for their project. This section is also used to acknowledge other project contributors and/or advisors. Students often use this section to acknowledge their faculty advisor. Keep your acknowledgments short, no more than a few lines. Make sure you've provided enough information so your audience can understand your research by reading your poster if you weren't standing right there next to it. Remember that this example is specifically appropriate for the sciences. Science posters typically follow a very rigid format. They run 3 or 4 columns wide and are read top to bottom, left to right. They also include, in order, an abbreviated abstract sometimes, an introduction, a methods section, a results section, and a discussion or conclusion section. Other fields have other requirements or expectations and may allow for more creativity. This is a good example for science. Here are a few examples of posters for other disciplines. This poster discussing the use of Voronoi diagrams loosely follows our more rigid example. If you look closely, it still has 3 columns. However, it has a very creative approach. The columns and sections may look like the pattern on a giraffe to you, which is also a Voronoi pattern. The fun colors and picture frames support the content discussing women's clothing in 18th century England. The audience for this history poster expects creativity rather than formality. This poster for a sociology project follows many of the science guidelines. However, it also utilizes a number of pictures and plots to guide the audience. The minimal text is in tables and Venn diagrams. A word of caution though, the dark background and light text may be difficult to read easily. Rather than a predictable formal layout, this poster describes a particular process for an audience that works with children. Clearly, the presenters know their audience. While colorful and creative, this poster remains professionally appropriate by employing 2 columns of different sizes, as shown by the header titles in the bright blue bars. Background images are used to visually balance the colorful data plots. Whatever way you choose to present your research, be sure to follow examples for your field. Now that you have all the text and images in a Word document, you can start creating your poster. The directions here are intentionally basic because every poster is unique. Always refer to the recommendations of the conference or organization for specific dimensions of a poster. Be sure to check out COD's Media Lab for additional software support. You can find out more about the Media Lab on the library's website. Many posters are made using PowerPoint, so start with a blank presentation. As a default, PowerPoint will make slides for widescreen or standard viewing. However, this won't work for making a poster. Change the slide size by going to Design on the menu bar, then Slide Size or Page Setup, depending on which version of PowerPoint you use. Select Custom Slide Size. In the window that pops up, choose Custom. Change the sizes to 48 inches wide and 36 inches high with a landscape orientation. This small step makes a big change. Notice the difference between the white rectangle and the screen size in green. The white area is the ratio of space you have to work on in this poster. To compare, the green area, which is the widescreen slide, has the measurements of 13.3 inches wide and 7.5 inches high. The white poster area is actually 4 feet wide and 3 feet tall. So let's look at some of the details you now need to consider. In our 3 foot by 4 foot example poster, the green title bar is 6 inches high. The font size of the title is 120 points, the headers are 60 points, the text is 42 points. Make sure to choose simple professional looking fonts and sizes that are large enough to read from a few feet away. Don't be afraid of having white space. It gives the eye a place to rest. And definitely don't hesitate to use the Media Lab for more technical assistance. But hold on, you aren't done yet. The last part of a poster presentation is the presentation. In fact, the poster now plays a supporting role to your explanation of your project because you are expected to stand near your poster and talk to the attendees about your work. Be prepared to spend some time working on the presentation aspect of your work. Careful preparation will dramatically improve how well your work is received. Remember, you learned earlier that the purposes of poster presentations are to learn about the work of peers, meet colleagues with similar interests, and forge new collaborations. This is the time that you get to share your work, meet new colleagues, and forge new collaborations. Just as every poster is unique, so is every presentation. Here are a few basic tips to consider. Refamiliarize yourself with the larger project. Remind yourself of details that had to be left off of the poster so that you can easily bring them up in discussions with viewers. Make sure you are familiar enough with your poster that you can talk about it without looking at it. Never read from your poster. Use the poster as a visual aid, pointing to it when you need to draw viewers' attention to a chart or photograph or a particularly interesting point. Show your poster to advisors, professors, friends, and classmates on a practice run to get a feel for how others might respond. Make changes to the poster to clarify any points or concerns they bring up. Note the kinds of questions they ask and be ready to answer those questions, possibly in your presentation. You could consider creating a handout that provides additional information or answers predictable questions. Prepare a short overview of the project where you walk your reader through the poster, draw attention to the most critical points, and fill in interesting details. Try to make it around 2 or 3 minutes long. This elevator pitch should be a jumping off point for further conversation. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of a mirror. Practice in front of your academic advisor. Practice in front of your classmates. Practice in front of your family. Practice in front of your pet. Practice as much as you can. Practice starting your talk from different sections of your poster. Practice being interrupted. Practice short versions. Practice long versions. I think you get the picture. Don't feel as if you have to start talking to viewers the second they stop in front of your poster. Smile and acknowledge them stopping, then give them a few minutes to read and process the information. After they've had some time to acquaint themselves with your project, say something like, "Hello, thanks for stopping by my poster. Can I give you a guided tour of my project?" This often works much better than simply asking, "Do you have any questions?" And this, in a nutshell, is how to create a great academic poster presentation. You know to keep your appearance appropriate for your field and audience. You know the importance of your message, your visuals, and your delivery. And you know that details matter. You only get a fraction of a second to make a first impression. So remember, luck favors the prepared. While we have covered a lot of material here, you may still have questions. You can check with your advisor or the organization at the conference. And consider making an appointment with a coach in the writing, reading, speech assistance area of the Learning Commons. We can assist you at all stages of the writing process, and you can practice your presentation in the speech studio. Thanks.